All right, let's shift into foods to avoid for health span. And it goes back to what we want to minimize or avoid the ultra processed foods and the animal products. But man, I didn't finish the slide either. I'm sorry, but we know that, and this was really well emphasized and discussed in real great detail on how not to age, that salt is the #1 risk factor for death. So salt is the #1. If you look at the study I'm referencing about diet is the #1 cause of early death and disability in the world, they were looking at different variables of diet, and salt was one of the worst things that you can eat for mortality and morbidity. So you want to limit salt. Where do we get salt? Mostly from the ultra processed foods. Bread, remember that bread and potato chips, gram for gram, have the same amount of salt in them. But because the salt is baked into the bread, you can't taste it, but it's on the surface of the chip, so you taste it as soon as it touches your tongue. So the trick for that is to limit the processed food. And if you're going to use salt in your food, add the salt at the very end. So it's at the tip, it's on the edge, so you will taste it. You don't need as much. Like I never add salt when I'm, making pasta. I was making pasta yesterday. Or I never add salt to things while I'm cooking it, and it's going to be cooking for a while because you're not going to taste it anyway. So I just add it at the end if needed. And usually I like to use miso paste or tamari or something like that, where at least you're getting the umami and you're getting lower levels of it. But the most beautiful thing I could promise you is that if you stick to it and you eat less salt and you stick to eating less salt, your palate will absolutely shift and you won't even miss it. All of a sudden you'll start tasting the saltiness of celery sticks, and everything starts to shift when you eat a whole food diet. It's incredible. Other things to avoid for health span: processed and red meat are top of the list. Those are two of the top things besides the things we were talking about, all the animal products and then anything ultra processed. But you definitely want to include these into your diet: leafy green cruciferous, berries, nuts, seeds, legumes, mushrooms, garlic, ginger, turmeric. So herbs and spices are very health promoting as well, which we'll talk a little bit about here. So let's just talk a little bit about fine tuning. Other things that we see in health span data: do maintain a healthy weight, which we'll talk about in the next slide. I know it's easier said than done for most people. That's what I do most of my days, is when I work with clients, it's mostly about achieving and maintaining a healthy weight. And it is really, really important when it comes to health span and longevity. Aiming for 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. That's what the going rate is. World Health Organization, we're all saying 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. Again, this is so easy. I have a couple videos now on my social media where I've showed how to get 10 servings in a meal, let alone a day. It's really easy. If 1 cup raw vegetables or 1 cup of fruit is a serving and half a cup cooked, like you can have a big salad, which I had this enormous salad for lunch with some cooked vegetables. I got probably all of my servings right in there. Have a serving of fruit, have some at breakfast, 1 before, whatever, later. Easy to get 10 servings a day. If you get nothing out of this lecture except for that, that's my #1 piece of advice. Aim for 7 to 10, but ideally 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. Then stay hydrated. A lot of people are getting dehydrated. And how do we do this? So the grossest thing I ever learned in graduate school, but it's very visceral and you can't forget it. So I'm just going to share this gross thing with you. So if you're drinking something right now, take a minute, take a pause, because it's gross. But the best way to know if you're hydrated, and I'll give you some calculations, but the best way to know, what I learned in grad school, is you want your urine to look like lemonade, not apple juice. Look, no, I have not drank lemonade or apple juice since hearing this, but it is very visual, isn't it? So that's a way to know if you're well hydrated. So, but the other way to think about it is, they say it's estimated, because it's no perfect way to calculate this, but you take your weight in pounds, have it, and you should drink that many ounces of liquid in a day. So like if you're 120 pounds, you're drinking 60 ounces of liquid a day. But it doesn't take into play, how hot is it? Are you exercising? Are you eating plant-based diet, which is high in water? So you do need to take all those things into account as well. Tea and coffee, you could sip that throughout the day to get your water, because there's so many you're getting basically water and phytonutrients, as long as you're not adding creamers and sugars and all that other stuff in there. If you're just drinking it straight up, like I tell my clients, you can maintain the fasted state and stay hydrated by sipping on things throughout the day. So of course, water, you could do sparkling water, you can do any kind of tea. Right now I'm drinking a green roasted rice tea, but I have chocolate tea, vanilla tea, blueberry tea. I just got a new peach tea. There's all these different teas. It's so fun and so yummy, and it's so good for you. I have vanilla tea in the morning, and green tea has the EGCG, all these powerful phytonutrients. But what's so exciting is that in the last year or two, Especially so, I've noticed a lot of really good evidence on coffee. So I know a lot of my coffee drinkers out there, people that love their coffee, it's actually a good thing to incorporate coffee. But also in the fasted state, this question comes up all the time. Coffee, tea, espresso, Americano, sparkly water, those are like the best kind of things to kind of play with. Those will help you stay hydrated and give you some phytonutrients as well. Just be careful what you add to them. Also, do add the nuts and seeds, which is great in Michael's book, How Not to Age. He talks a lot about nuts and seeds and polyphenols, which we'll do in a little bit, herbs and spices. Avoid sugary beverages, sodium, animal products, ultra-processed foods. So how do you know your healthy weight? I use the Hamwe formula. I'm not the only one, but that's like the most commonly used formula just to guesstimate. And actually, when you look at the healthspan data, it tends to go lower in ideal body weight. But this is a good way to shoot for the average. So if you're a male, you start with 106 pounds for the first 5 feet, and then you add 6 pounds for each additional inch. Females, we start with 100 pounds for the first 5 feet, and then 5 pounds for each additional inch. So if you're a female, that's 5'5", that's 125. Now, plus or minus 10% on either side of that is a healthy weight range, which is a nice range, by the way. So say 120 pounds, let's just say, is like 108 to 132. Like there's a big range in there if you add the plus or minus 10%. So that's a good thing to aim for and to focus on when you're trying to assign your healthy ideal body weight. 7 to 10 a day. We just talked about that. But again, that research is based on, that's the study right there. And 500 to 800 grams, which is 7 to 10 servings a day, associated with reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, all-cause mortality. And remember, 1 serving equals 1 cup raw, half a cup cooked, or 1 medium piece of fruit. These collectively contain ample fiber, amino acids, essential fatty acids, folate, vitamin C, E, K1, which is phytoquinone, calcium, magnesium, iron, potassium, phosphorus, zinc, and all the phytonutrients that we talked about before. Prioritize water. Make sure your urine is lemonade, not apple juice. Avoid sugary beverages, and then the coffee and tea. Back to that. Nuts and seeds. The reason, just nutritionally speaking, what's so great about nuts and seeds is that they're loaded with these essential fats. They've got phytosterols and lignans, ellagic acid, and certain things that are just kind of hard to find elsewhere, which is why they're part of that 6 daily 3. They're really important. So 1 to 2 ounces a day, really health promoting. Here's another really cool slide on all the things that are unique in nuts and seeds and what they do for you. If you want to take a look at that. Improved endothelial function, improved blood pressure, favorable gut modification, all these wonderful things. And the polyphenols, which again, I encourage you to whip out How Not to Age and go into detail on the polyphenols, but they're associated with beneficial effects on the gut microbiome and the small molecule metabolites. They contribute to better physical mental health. They're antioxidative, anti-inflammatory, anti-carcinogenic, cardiometabolic benefits, act as prebiotics. So many reasons too. These are the biggest ones you find. Again, it goes back to the same foods. See, all these things come back to the same things. That's what's so exciting. Sodium, again, really quickly, I kind of went too fast for my slides in what I was saying, but remember, it's the #1 dietary risk factor for death. Sodium also leads to inflammation, increases blood pressure, and the risk for hypertension. Some people are more sensitive than other people, and they retain a lot of more fluid, but it's another form of inflammation. 75% of sodium comes from these processed foods in the US diet. You can shift your palate. And then again, remember too, if you're going to add salt, do it at the end. And that is what my last book was, the Choose You Now diet. I basically took those two components, a whole food plant-based diet, time-restricted eating, and then I also applied mindfulness, which is something I would love to talk about, but I don't have time today. But mindfulness is the reminder that we are human after all. And the most challenging part of transitioning your diet are the psychosocial environment that we live in. And so I define that in this book as the modern day trifecta of modern abundance. Basically, this first part is that we've got this evolutionary physiological drive to eat enough, right? We are biologically driven to get as much calories as we can for times of scarcity so we could survive. It's a survival instinct, and we haven't evolved away from that yet. We haven't adapted away from that yet. And instead, the part 2 of this trifecta is that there is constant abundance, constant temptation, constantly everywhere we go, 24/7. You can get anything you want anytime delivered to your door. And usually it's not the most healthful food. So we are constantly bombarded by food. Everyone's eating around you. You're weird if you're not eating it. That's the third part of this trifecta, is the normalization of overeating and obesity. So like, you're the weird one if you're skipping breakfast. You're the weird one if you're saying no to dessert. You're the weird one if you're saying, oh, no, I'm not eating meat right now. And it sounds like, oh, not a big deal, but it is, and it plants seeds. And my clients, I think that's what I work the most on with my clients, is navigating these tough situations where you don't want to offend people. You don't want to stand out as, you don't want to like rock the boat. You don't want to, people will ask you questions. I have these clients that go from being obese to achieving a healthy weight. Some of my clients lose 100, 150 pounds. And their family's looking at them saying, aren't you sure where's your protein coming from? And aren't you worried about, and you're too thin? But we're using objective standards for ideal body weight. We're using a health promoting diet, using all of this data that we've got. And people are just so uncomfortable with it because, first of all, they're not used to seeing their friend looking like that, but also because it makes you question what you're doing yourself and the choices you're making. So it is really hard out there. And no matter how strong you are and how much you know what you're doing, and no matter how you've seen, and I've witnessed this with my clients, the extraordinary transformation of not only their weight, but their labs and everything improving and getting rid of. My favorite part of my work is the fact that as a healthcare provider, I was taught in grad school and in my clinical rotations that my role is to mitigate the progression of disease, is to make sure my clients don't have to increase their medication doses. But in 20 years, my clients get off their medications. They get better. They recover from chronic conditions. I always say results are typical. People get healthier. It absolutely can happen. So I'm watching my clients have extraordinary results. They're getting off these medications. Clients getting off lifetimes of medications, 30 years of medications, off in a week. I see that all the time. Don't do this at home. Use a healthcare professional to help you. But it is so shocking how predictable and generalizable it is. And still these people's friends, family, and whatnot are saying, well, where are you getting your protein? Are you sure you're not too thin? I mean, it's mind-blowing the way society thinks about food and diet and body image. And it's very frustrating. So just know that no matter where your intentions are, do your own homework, find your truth, use labs, you use your healthcare team, and establish those parameters so that you can stay strong and resilient in the face of all the crazy that's out there. We are living in a crazy food culture like never before. And so it's okay to know that that's happening and be uncomfortable with it. Just stand in your truth. So what does that mean? Let's stand in, what does this look like? It all starts and ends with all of the deliciousness. So I have put this list together of just a few of the things that you could eat made out of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices in infinite tasty combinations. And those are pots, pans, plates, power bowls, soups, salads, sides, sweets, stews, stir-fries, stacks, scrambled skewers, sushi, sauces, sautés, sheet pan slaws, steaks, stuffed veggies, chilies, chowders, casseroles, curries, lasagna, loaded potatoes, loaves, pastas, paninis, paellas, pancakes, pilaf, pizzas, polenta, pestos, puddings, pasta goods, purees, bisques, bakes, barbecue, biryani, burritos, burgers, hummus, dips, dressings, wraps, rolls, ramen, risottos, roast, tacos, tostadas, toast, tofu, tempeh, trail mix, tarts, tagines, dumplings, fajitas, masalas, kebabs, quiches, wings, ratatouilles, and so much more. There is no limit to what you could eat with whole plant foods. It can be delicious, exciting, and you get all of these benefits of health span.